Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a haul video of some books I recently got from Mr. K's used bookstore, which is a chain in some southern states of the US, and also books I've primarily gotten from a number of recent library trips, as well as, what I'm currently reading and plans for videos I would like to do this month. Now, as I mentioned in a few previous videos, I'm strongly considering not doing many book reviews again until I get more subscribers, because unfortunately many of my book review videos, where they get views and even likes, generally tend to not get any comments, so I don't know what that's all about. I don't know if I'm choosing the wrong books to review, or if I just need to get like a bigger audience before I can count on people like actually commenting on my book reviews, not just like watching them and dropping a like. And I am planning to do a bunch of tag videos. During most of March, my like 99% I think of my writing was like researching, writing, gathering images, and editing for my blog post for the A to Z challenge, which runs every April. This year, for obvious reasons, my main blog is Ukrainian history and culture, and my secondary blog, a names blog, is about Ukrainian names, and they're 4 wildcard days, because there are certain letters the Ukrainian Cyrillic alphabet doesn't have. I'm sorry if I'm talking too quickly. And so anyway, I'm also like, obviously because April is National Poetry Month, I'm hoping to do some videos of me reciting some poems I know by heart, including making up for a fumbled recitation of a Shakespearean sonnet, which inspired the title of one of my books. I'm really embarrassed. I had to look down at the page twice when I was reciting that. So anyway, let's just get on with the meat of the video. And so I finally began reading this yesterday on Shabbos, Betsy's Wedding, the last book in the Betsy Tacy series. I put a few bookmarks in. There are a few like really cringy scenes I'm going to be mentioning when I write a blog post about this. But overall, I'm really enjoying the book, which is surprising because many reviewers say it's one of the weaker books in the series. But I'm actually really, enjoying reading Betsy in her early 20s and her efforts as a housewife, except for a couple of like really, really like cringy scenes when she's saying, "Oh, I don't need a job. Thanks for offering it to me. But my only job now is being Joe's lovely little wifey and being a housewife." Like, that doesn't fit at all with who Betsy has been through the entire rest of the series. And that one cringy scene a lot of people take issue with. Betsy and her best friend Tacy are like worrying because their other best friend Tib, at all of 23 years old, is destined to be an old maid because she's making so much money and she's so independent, and she's even planning to buy her own car. And oh God, no man would want to marry a woman like that. And it's just like, oh, but other than that, I'm really enjoying this book, and I guess I would recommend it, obviously, if you've read the entire series. And I am planning to do like a video on my general thoughts on the entire series after I finally finish reading it. And if I get more subscribers, I do hope to turn my blog posts about these books into videos. And so this is one of the library books I have out, Marjorie Morningstar by Herman Wouk, who lived to almost 104 years old. I have 4 of his other books. Unfortunately, like most of my other books, they're in storage 900 miles away. He wrote a lot about like Jewish history and culture, like historical fiction, and kind of mirrored his own journey because he started out not so observant and he got, more religious later in life. But I will say this about him. He's kind of like Leon Uris in that you can kind of tell he's a man writing about women, because that's not, how women would write about other women, just, general things you can notice throughout the book and the way he, portrays women. And while he also loves his heroes like larger than life, almost kind of like a comical thing. But anyway, this is the synopsis. A starry-eyed young beauty, Marjorie Morgenstern, is 19 years old when she leaves New York to accept the job of her dreams, working in a summer stock company for Noel Ayerman, its talented and intensely charismatic director. Released from the social constraints of her traditional Jewish family and thrown into the glorious, colorful world of theater, Marjorie finds herself entangled in a powerful affair with the man destined to become the greatest and the most destructive love of her life. Rich with humor and poignancy, Marjorie Morningstar is a classic love story, one that spans 2 continents and 2 decades in the life of its heroine. An unforgettable tale, this pain to youthful love and the bittersweet sorrow of a first heartbreak endures as one of Herman Wouk's most beloved creations. So I don't know if I'll get to this or not, but I guess I eventually would like to add it to my personal library, because as I mentioned, I do have 4 of Mr. Wouk's other books. He was a great historical novelist, even if, he might not necessarily been like the greatest writer, but he was like a great storyteller, like Leon Uris. He just, I guess happened to have a really good editor as well. And this is another one I got from the library, The Nazi Officer's Wife by Edith Hahn Beer, or I don't know, Bear, I might be pronounced originally. Edith would be like the way it was pronounced in German because the TH is pronounced as a T. So anyway, Edith Hahn was an outspoken young woman in Vienna when the Gestapo forced her into a ghetto and then into a slave labor camp. When she returned home months later, she knew she would become a hunted woman and went underground. With the help of a Christian friend, she emerged in Munich as Grete Denner. There she met Werner Vetter, a Nazi party member who fell in love with her. Despite Edith's protests, and even her eventual confession that she was Jewish, he married her and kept her identity a secret. In wrenching detail, Edith recalls a life of constant, almost paralyzing fear. She tells how German officials casually questioned the lineage of her parents, how during childbirth she refused all painkillers, afraid that in an altered state of mind she might reveal something of her past, and how, after her husband was captured by the Soviets, she was bombed out of her house and had to hide while drunken Russian soldiers raped women on the street. Despite the risk it posed to her life, Edith created a remarkable record of survival. She saved every document, as well as photographs she took inside labor camps, now part of the permanent collection at the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. These hundreds of documents, several of which are included in this volume, form the fabric of a gripping new chapter in the history of the Holocaust. Complex, troubling, and ultimately triumphant. And one of the many types of books I have in storage 900 miles away, I have a lot of like Holocaust show memoirs. I don't remember if I have so much like fiction based on it, but I do have many memoirs and nonfiction books as well. Fortunately, I did have enough of my wits about me to bring like most of my like heavy research volumes I use when writing my historical fiction and just doing research for my own reasons. And I really like was looking at like master's degree programs in the international, which means I'm English language schools in Israel after I make Aliyah, and I'm really strongly considering the Holocaust Studies master's degree program at Haifa University because, that's just something I feel I would like really excel at. I know this sounds like really depressing and macabre, but I've always been, drawn to dark periods of history and dark nights of the soul. And there are, so many Holocaust museums in Israel, and even if I don't work in that particular type of museum, maybe I could just work in like an archive or an academic library or something like that. But that is, something I'm really going to be pursuing when I make Aliyah. But obviously, unfortunately, I have aged out of the free tuition because I'm over the age of 30. I hesitated too long, but I will be hopefully doing some more future videos on why I decided to make Aliyah and just, things that led up to it. So that's one interesting book I'll be looking forward to reading. And here's another one, Nazis Knew My Name, by Magda Hellinger and Maya Lee. This is the synopsis. In March 1942, 25-year-old kindergarten teacher Magda Hellinger was among the first Jews to be sent to the Auschwitz concentration camp. The SS soon realized that if they put prisoners in day-to-day charge of the accommodation blocks, they could deflect attention from themselves. Magda was one such prisoner, selected for leadership, put in charge as Blockälteste of hundreds of women in the notorious experimental Block 10, and, later, as Lagerälteste of 30,000 women in Camp C, Birkenau. She found herself constantly walking a dangerous line, using her role to save lives while avoiding being seen as soft by the SS and risking execution. Through sheer inner strength and shrewd survival instincts, Magda was able to rise above the horror and cruelty of the camps to build pivotal relationships with those in charge, including some of Auschwitz's most notorious Nazi senior officers, offering kindness and hope to the women in her care. Drawn from Magda's personal account and completed by her daughter's extensive research, this awe-inspiring tale offers us incredible insight into human nature, resilience, and the goodness that shines through history's darkest hours. And hopefully, God willing, when I have my books back with me, finally, after coming up on 5 years now, I will be doing a bookshelf tour of them. But, my previous bookshelf tour video only got one comment on it. So I don't know if that was just, maybe like too niche, just talking about my Jewish religious books instead of books on my shelves in general. So hopefully my future bookshelf tour videos will have much more like engagement with it, and people will, be interested in the kinds of books I have, because I really would like to show them off. This is another library book, Leading the Witness by Amber Skorin. It's about a woman who used to be a Jehovah's Witness and left the cult After a lifetime of devotion to her religion, Amber Skora was shunned by family and friends as an apostate and found herself alone in Shanghai, thrown into a world she had only known from the periphery with no education or support system. This is her coming of age story as a woman already in her 30s who finds her freedom in one of the world's most restrictive countries. A third generation Jehovah's Witness, Skora had devoted her life to sounding God's warning of impending Armageddon. She volunteered to take the message to China, where the preaching she did was illegal and could result in her expulsion or worse. Here she had some distance from her community for the first time. Immersion in a foreign language and culture, and a whole new way of thinking, turned her life upside down. Getting to know worldly people, while preaching and at the job she used as a cover, Skora began to understand that there were other ways of seeing the world and living a fulfilling life. When one of these relationships became an escape hatch, her loss of faith culminated in her own personal apocalypse, the only kind of ending possible for a Jehovah's Witness. In this unforgettable memoir, Skora examines what it's like to start one's life over again with an entirely new identity. It follows her to New York City, where a personal tragedy forces her to look for new ways to find meaning in the absence of religion. With compelling spare prose, Leaving the Witness traces the bittersweet process of starting over when everything one's life was built around is gone. And I've also read a number of other memoirs of women who left Mormonism. I don't believe I've read any books about women who escaped from the Jehovah's Witnesses, so that's, one of my personal interests. And this is another book. It was on display at the library. It looked interesting. Armando Lucas Correa, The Daughter's Tale. Berlin, 1939. The dreams that Amanda Sternberg and her husband Julius had for their daughters are shattered when the Nazis descend on Berlin, burning down their beloved family bookshop and sending Julius to a concentration camp. Desperate to save her children, Amanda flees towards the south of France, where the widow of an old friend of her husband's has agreed to take her in. Along the way, a refugee ship headed for Cuba, offers another chance at escape, and there, at the dock, Amanda is forced to make an impossible choice that will haunt her for the rest of her life. Once in Vienna, her brief respite is interrupted by the arrival of Nazi forces, and Amanda finds herself in a labor camp, where she must once again make a heroic sacrifice. New York, 2015. 80-year-old Elise Duval receives a call from a woman bearing messages from a time and country that she forced herself to forget. A French Catholic who arrived in New York after World War II, Elise is shocked to discover that the letters were from her mother, written in German during the war. Despite Elise's best efforts to stave off her past, 7 decades of secrets begin to unravel. Based on true events, The Daughter's Tale chronicles one of the most harrowing atrocities perpetrated by the Nazis during the war. Heartbreaking and immersive, it is a beautifully crafted family saga of love, survival, and redemption. So hopefully I will be able to get to that before I need to take it back to the library. And this is another one which I saw on display. I think it's a new Helen Rappaport after the Romanovs, and I have read several of her other books previously. She's generally a very good writer, and this is basically, about what happened to the Romanovs after they escaped the new Soviet Union and went into exile in Paris. They were finally forced into the position of the have-nots, and they had been living in unbelievable wealth for their entire lives, millions upon millions of dollars. The whole world was their oyster. They could do whatever they wanted, luxurious palaces and gourmet food. All these, servants. They could, travel the world on yachts, and they had second homes in all these other cities all across Europe. And now they had to actually work for a living and, sell their jewels and things to make money to survive, and just, completely learning all over again how to live like a normal person instead of an out of touch, upper class twit. So that would be an interesting book to read. And here's another one. I saw it on display at the library. Ordinary Hazards by Nikki Grimes. It's a novel in verse memoir. So I really do enjoy novels in verse ever since I took my YA literature class when I was studying towards a master's degree in library science. Hopefully I will enjoy that book as well. And this is Mr. President, How Long Must We Wait by Tina Cassidy. I saw this on display for Women's History Month, and I just thought it would be an interesting thing because I recently, I guess last year it was, PBS American Experience, the vote, this brave, unbelievably, difficult process that began, in the 1840s for women in the U.S. to have the right to vote, just like men took for granted. And, there were, so many emotional things in this series. It all moved me almost to tears at several points. My foremothers, they worked so hard so, we could have the right to vote and have, near complete equality under the law. Unfortunately, it's still not, completely equal, but we're so much better off than our foremothers were like 100 or 200 years ago, and we owe so much to these like brave like women who sacrificed so much. And as I've mentioned in a few previous videos, obviously this is would be the UK, not US, but for one of my Helix flat projects, I'm planning to do the suffragette colors of green, white, and violet. So like an amethyst, maybe a white, an emerald, a white opal, and an amethyst. It stood for give women votes, and there was also a lot of other great symbolism in the suffragette colors. This is after the Vienna woods. And in the Vienna woods, the trees remain, by Elizabeth Osbrink. And it's also another survival memoir during World War II, and it's just something really interesting. Otto Ullmann, a Jewish boy, was sent from Austria to Sweden right before the outbreak of World War II. Despite the huge Swedish resistance to Jewish refugees, 13-year-old Otto was granted permission to enter the country, all in accordance with the Swedish Archbishop's secret plan to save Jews on condition that they convert to Christianity. Otto found work at the Kamprad family's farm in the province of Småland, and there became close friends with Ingvar Kamprad, who would grow up to be the founder of IKEA. At the same time, however, Ingvar was actively engaged in Nazi organizations and a great supporter of the fascist Per Engdahl. Meanwhile, Otto's parents remained trapped in Vienna, and the last letters he received were sent from Theresienstadt. With thorough research, including personal files, initiated by the predecessor to today's Swedish security service, and more than 500 letters, Elisabeth Osbrink illustrates how Swedish society was infused with anti-Semitism and how families are shattered by war and asylum politics. So hopefully I will be able to get to that book too as well. And here is another show a memoir I found really interesting, a new book in one of the libraries I haven't been to for a while. Malaks Cat. It's the unlikely story of this how this young woman survived the war in Poland with her kitty cat. So, I love animals and I love cats. As I mentioned in a previous video, I help with taking care of a bunch of local cats. My favorite is named White Shoes. He's a little tuxedo cat. Unfortunately, he lost his eye. I don't know if someone attacked him or he was in an accident. These cats are just so special to me. I love them so much. Hopefully, I can take at least one with me when, I make Aliyah. Here's the synopsis. Growing up in the Polish village of Tarnogrod, on the fringes of a deep pine forest, Mala has the happiest childhood she could have hoped for. But when the German invasion begins, her beloved village becomes a ghetto, and her family and friends are reduced to starvation. She takes matter into her own hands and bravely removes her yellow star, risking sneaking out to the surrounding villages to barter for food. It is on her way back that she sees her loved ones rounded up for deportation and received a smuggled letter from her sister warning her to stay away, with only her cat, Malak, the name means angel, and the strength of the stories taught by her family. She walks away from everything she holds dear. Malak becomes her family, her only respite from painful loneliness, a guide and reminder to stay hopeful even when faced with unfathomable darkness. With her guardian angel by her side, Mala finds a way to navigate the dangerous forests, outwit Nazi soldiers and hostile villagers, and survive against all the odds. Filled with remarkable spiritual strength that allows readers to see the war through the innocence of a child's eyes, Malaks Cat is a powerful and unique addition to the Holocaust canon. So that's also another book I'm be looking forward to reading, and maybe if I like it enough, I will add it to my personal library afterwards. And here is, sorry, books are stacked up too much. The Scribe of Siena by Melody Winnower, and it just looks really interesting. There's another one in this pile. I'm also going to show you about like illuminated manuscripts and such. New York, present day. In the wake of her brother's untimely death, Beatrice is surprised to learn that she has inherited not only his historic house in picturesque Siena, but also his research into the secret history of this Tuscan city he once called home. In his notes, she stumbles upon the journal of a 14th century fresco artist, in whose paintings she discovers the impossible image of her own face. The mystery he left behind draws her from the safety of her century to a Siena on the eve of the plague's arrival. Italy, 1347. Gabriele Corsi dreams again of a lady in green, the inspiration for his latest commission, a fresco on the Ospedale. But when Beatrice crosses his path in waking life, his muse becomes just as real as the sinister conspiracy that unfolds around them. With the plague about to claim its victims, Siena and Florence struggle for power in a war that takes a dangerous personal turn. Caught in the treachery and beauty of the two most formidable cities in Italy, Beatrice and Gabriele will be torn between their allegiance to state, to country, and even to century. And that just looks like something I would really enjoy. I was reading The Bookseller of Florence by Ross King last year, about a really cool bookseller named Vespasiano in um, 15th century Florence, and he like really brought bookbinding and bookselling and illuminated manuscripts to a whole new level, and it also explores many other interesting things. And I didn't like get very far in this story, but when for the Insecure Writers Support Group yearly short story content anthology, the thing I was initially writing was set in Fiesole, Italy, on 1478, which is when the a deadly second wave of the Black Plague is raging, and the two main characters go to their uncle's villa, and it was the theme of the contest that this year was first love, and I was going to write a love story between this young woman Septima, who's I think like 21, and a young man who's also staying at the villa. He's in like a manuscript Illuminator, but I didn't really get too far into the story because I guess it wasn't the right time to write it, and I also had some great ideas for turning this into a full-length novel that starts long before the plague, like tracking her over her entire life, and I just like really liked the story and the characters I came up with, so I guess it deserved more than just like a short story for a contest. And here's one of the books I got at the Mr. K's used bookstore recently. Like most of these came from the $3 stacks outside, and the historical fiction thing, the books they have outside are always like cheaper than the ones inside. This is set during Virginia during the U.S. Civil War by Donald McCagg. He wrote Rhett Butler's People, which is an approved Gone with the Wind spinoff, and he also wrote Ruth's Journey about Miami, which is another approved Gone with the Wind companion novel. And so hopefully I will really like this. I really like the U.S. Civil War. I would like to write some historicals about the U.S. Civil War at one point also. And here's a book about the Middle Ages that looked really interesting. When Christ and His Saints Slept by Sharon K. Penman, 1135. As church bells toll for the death of England's King Henry I, his barons faced the unwelcome prospect of being ruled by a woman, Henry's beautiful daughter Maud, Countess of Anjou. But before Maud can claim her throne, her cousin Stephen seizes it. In their long and bitter struggle, all of England will bleed and burn. Sharon K. Penman's splendid novel summons to life a spectacular medieval tragedy, whose unfolding breaks the heart, even as it prepares the way for splendors to come, the glorious age of Eleanor of Aquitaine, and the Plantagenets that would soon illumine the world. So hopefully I will enjoy this book. It's also very thick. I wish more like historical writers had the guts to, disregard the word count police like I do and just, write a novel at the length that needs to be, particularly when you have a large ensemble cast and it's set over many years. You cannot, like, realistically, honestly, just, pack all that action the way it needs to be told into all of 300 pages. No, sometimes you'll need, like, over 300,000 words, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it, even if the word count police, like, make you feel like, oh, you're, like, doing a terrible thing if a book is over, 100,000 words, if that, because that's just too unthinkable. Here's another historical book about illuminated manuscripts called The Illuminator by Brenda Rickman Van Trees. It is England in the late 14th century, a time when the old feudal order is starting to crack, but the whim of a lord or the pleasure of a bishop still has the power to seal nearly anyone's fate. Books are rare and costly, painstakingly lettered by hand, and illuminated with exquisite paintings. For Lady Catherine of Blackingham Manor, a widow and mother trying to safeguard her holdings without the dubious protection of her late husband, it is a time made both sweeter and more perilous by the arrival of a master illuminator called Finn. Caught between the king's taxes and the church's tithes, Catherine strikes a bargain with the local abbot. She will take Finn and his pretty young daughter into her household in exchange for the monastery's protection. Finn is working not only on approved church texts, but secretly and dangerously on a forbidden English translation of the Bible. As a hesitant friendship between Catherine and Finn grows into a passionate alliance, wonderful new storyteller Brenda Rickman Van Trees brings us a glorious novel of love, treachery, faith, and redemption on the eve of the Renaissance. So hopefully I will enjoy that book too. And I read this book, I think it was 2011, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I absolutely loved it. I would say this is probably in my top 20, even maybe top 10 favorite books I've ever read. It's just so good. A classic Bildungsroman, and there's, not a single word wasted. And even part 2, which is mostly about the story of Francie's parents, it doesn't feel like, backstory info dump at all, even though there is, more telling than showing, because, it just naturally works with the way the story is written. And one of the Easter eggs I put in a lot of my books, I wouldn't say maybe all of them, but, some of them there's a difficult birth that's just, inspired by, something that happened when Francie's Aunt Sissy, she'd been having children for a long time, and she keeps losing them. And then she finally, gives birth in a hospital, and the baby is saved, and the doctor, shouts oxygen, and then they like put the little mask over the baby's face, and the baby, comes back to life, perks up, and starts crying. I've had the sheen of like a doctor or a nurse, shouting for oxygen in a few of my books when a baby is like born like groggy and not breathing or just struggling a little bit, and that's inspired by this scene. It's just one of those like memorable scenes that just gives me goosebumps years after I read it. And these were like really cool to find. Anne of Green Gables in an original hard. Well, I don't know, obviously not the original, but like in a hardcover from a really long time ago with the original illustrations. When I read it years ago, it was like in a tiny mass market paperback, with the like writing like very very close to the gutter, so the margins aren't very good. And as I've gotten older, my eyes aren't what they used to be. And I don't think I ever like read the sequel, Anne of Avonlea, or if I did, I gave up soon. I know I read one of the later books about Anne, but I can't remember which one. But I didn't like read very long into it. I guess at my age, I wasn't ready to read about like a 16-year-old or someone who is even older than that. But now that I'm an adult, I would love to like revisit these books. And like many people say, they've held up wonderfully even when they're not reading them as children. And it'll be a wonderful palate cleanser after that hideous Anne with an E garbage on Netflix. I have a whole blog post I wrote about that. It was just like awful on so many levels, and it wasn't even like trying to be true to the source material. It was just trying to like show off 21st century attitudes. And this is one final book I got from the library, Hollywood Her Story. Just like pictures and stuff, like a big coffee table book about the women who've made Hollywood from the silent era until today. And I absolutely love film history. And in the past, one of the careers I considered was like doing like film restoration and taking the class and getting the certificate they have at the George Eastman House in Rochester, New York, when I still lived in New York. But I don't know, if there's much of a market for that. But I, still am very, very interested in like film preservation and film history. And who knows, maybe I will end up working in a film archive someday. And so I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it wasn't, too rambling or scatterbrained, but I did like I'm showing off these books, and hopefully I will, get a bigger audience if I have some more like general purpose, general interest videos instead of like really serious, intense, niche interest. Although I obviously don't intend to, constantly be buying lots and lots of books just for the purpose of mindly generating content and having like lots of haul videos like a lot of other booktubers have. And so thank you very, very much for listening. If you enjoy this kind of content, please consider liking and sharing and subscribing. And I really do appreciate seeing interaction from my subscribers and viewers. And like please leave a comment down below if you've read any of these books or you didn't like them, or books you might suggest for me to read that you think I would like. And I will see you guys again very soon later in this week. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.